It is not too often in 2025 that a toy actually gets me interested and excited, but that is definitely the case with this all-new Star Wars Power the Force action figure line. Hey everybody, it's Rust Belt Collector here, and today we are taking a look at this all-new clone Captain Rex with Mech Force suit. It's a little gimmicky, it's a little ridiculous, but this new line of figures in the 3 3/4 inch, 4-inch-ish scale is doing something right for a change when it comes to Hasbro and pricing and just everything. We'll get into it. There is a single carded version of this figure. I have it on order from Amazon, but I missed the first couple rounds of pre-orders, and so for all intents and purposes, it's the same figure. The only difference is that this one in the mech suit pack has this like techno markings on the chest plate. It's something that they've been doing with these mech suit packs. So in every other way, this is the same figure that you would get single carded. This one retails for 20 bucks, and I think single carded it retails for like $8 or something like that. So in terms of pricing, this is a very reasonable price point for figures, especially in this day and age, 2025, where inflation is through the roof and all of those other issues with toy production. Getting a single card figure for $8 or a pack like this with a big mech suit for $20 feels rather nice. I mean, this is the equivalent plastic of like a vintage collection figure and probably a Black Series figure. So 20 bucks doesn't seem all that unreasonable. It's geared towards kids, but it has some interesting implications for collectors as well. The packaging is fun and definitely geared towards a younger audience. The epic world of action is what they kind of loosely umbrella all of this under. You've got the Marvel figures, you've got other figures, I'm pretty sure, that also just fall under this lower quality but still decent figure line. On the side, some artwork. It definitely is curious that we're getting a Phase 2 mech with a Phase 1 Captain Rex, but in a toy line like this, I really don't care all that much about that type of accuracy here. On the back, you just have some examples of what the figure can do, different ways you can display it, the mech suit, legal stuff, blah, 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 blah. Nothing too crazy. Alrighty, so out of the box, here we have the mech suit and Captain Rex, and let's go over what we get here. Apart from the two figures, we get two of these larger see-through plastic cannons. These are more for the mech suit figure. And then we also get two see-through plastic DC-17 pistols, one with a nice blaster firing effect. Despite these being see-through, they actually work really well for this figure. He holds them really well, they're scaled properly, and the blast effect is really cool. So if you're into this and you want this for a more accurate display, you could just put some paint on these blasters and they would look really nice. I really like this blaster effect, so I think I'll probably just end up painting these with some black paint, a little silver dry brushing, and then have a cool blaster effect that really you don't get anywhere else in vintage collection or even older Star Wars. These larger cannons can be attached different places. Oddly enough, they can be pegged into the back of Captain Rex. I'm sure there's other accessories that will be for this line that can peg into the back of different characters, so this isn't necessarily what it's intended for, but it's more of a universal peg system that can just be attached to anything in this toy line. For the mech suit, you can put it here on the shoulder pad like a shoulder mounted cannon. You can also put it in the hand like blasters, and then also you can put it on the forearm, which this really reminds me of some of the systems you see with like Transformers. That's kind of the vibes that this gives, is like a Transformers HULKBUSTER kind of vibe, and I definitely like it. Or I guess if you've ever played the Xbox Revenge of the Sith game back in the day, this is kind of like a Blaze Trooper. This is probably the closest we will ever get to a 3 3/4 inch Hasbro Blaze Trooper, which I think is kind of fun. So as you can kind of see, this figure actually does have some limited articulation, which I think is perfect for what it is. It actually has like semi-ball jointed shoulders. They can swivel all the way around. No head articulation, a slight bend at the elbows, just forward and back, no swivel. But that gives you enough to where you can kind of play with it, you can have some fun with it. He can be dual wielding these blasters and going into battle against the separatists. The detailing here is actually pretty cool. This is more of like a mechanized sci-fi looking clone trooper armor, so he's got his camera, his holsters, his belt box, even his pauldron is here, and that is actually a fully removable piece. It's just a clear plastic pauldron element, and then that would allow you to put both blasters on the shoulders for full effect. Honestly, looking at this, the way that it's sculpted and everything, I could kind of see this maybe being set up for some future releases, maybe some other officers. You could do a Commander Fox with just some minor retooling of the headpiece here. You could do just a generic clone trooper with these same arm pieces. So I like that this is removable because it means that maybe, just maybe, if this toy line does well, we will actually see some repaints, and that is what I would love to see in this toy line. Interestingly enough, you can also peg these in at the legs. I guess if you wanted these to be like jet boosters like R2-D2 has, you could fly around with those facing downward. There's also a peg in the back there, so there's a lot of different attachment points here. You could get really creative with it, and I definitely would be interested to see what other pieces can be attached to these figures. And again, I just want to emphasize, I love the little mechanized details like these pistons in the back here. This really does feel like a Hulkbuster for clone troopers, and that's so fun. They didn't just, upscale a clone trooper, they actually made it look more mechanized and honestly a little bit like sinister, like it's going to go out into battle and do some damage. It just hinges open, and then you have this little clip here inside that allows you to place the figure. There isn't much room for the figure to really do anything. You just kind of close him in there almost like carbonite, and then there you are. There's your mechanized Captain Rex, and he can stomp around into battle. It's still very fun, and I think that, like, if I was a kid, this would have just been insane. I would have had so much fun with this clone trooper mech suit, and honestly, it's just cool. This is a proper, fun toy, and that's what this is all about. Like, this is what Star Wars toys should be in 2025. They should be fun. Not everything can be a Black Series. Not everything can be a vintage collection. Sometimes you just have to have fun. Oh, and actually, the wrists have a swivel. That is a really nice little detail that I completely missed earlier. So this does have some really nice playability, play features, some good posing. It's just fun. I really like seeing fun clone trooper toys on shelves in this day. This is something that feels very, very 2008, very 2010, Clone Wars era, and we're getting it in 2025. I love to see it. I think it's safe to say, though, that the main feature here is this Captain Rex figure. This is the all-new Power the Force figure line, and this brings a lot of cool features that we did not see in the previous iteration of this toy line. The Epic Heroes line, I think it was called, is what we had before, and the only figure I have from that is this Sabine Wren, and as you can see, this is basically just 5 POA. There's no knees, no elbows, no nothing. It's got good paint, it's a fine figure. I bought it for the accessories and it was cheap on sale, but ultimately this was kind of a disappointment of a figure. There really wasn't enough articulation to make it fit in with modern TVC or even older 2005 figures. They have gone ahead and changed all of that for this new line. You have a ball joint at the head, you have a hinge and swivel at the shoulder, you have a hinge and swivel at the elbow, no wrist swivel. That would be one thing that I would like to see going forward in the future, a simple wrist swivel, just like we have here on the mech suit. That would go far for making these figures really, really incredible. But you have a ball hinge at the hip, giving you a lot of range of motion, even with the cama here. You have a single jointed knee, which this might be a gripe of mine. It's really ratchety, and so I feel like I'm straining that joint just a bit when I try to actually use it. But other than that, it is a solid joint. It swivels. You can bend it down to there, and then you can pivot it side to side. And then there's no ankle joint, which I don't think that you really need. I would say if anything was added to this figure, it would be a wrist joint. That way, if you had a blaster like the DC-15 Carbine, he could hold it with 2 hands. As it stands now, he's really only designed for single-handed blasters, and I think that that's okay for Captain Rex, but in the future, wrist joints would be really excellent to see here. Of course, he has holsters, which work for one blaster, but really not the other because of the blast effect, so that doesn't really work all that well, but I really don't mind. Again, I can probably substitute other blasters for him, or even just when I get the single carded release, put the blasters from one into the other and give him blaster firing effects for the other ones. It really doesn't matter to me, but this figure is really solid. Taking a look here at the paint apps and the sculpting, this figure looks incredible. Honestly, this is a very, very accurate design for a realistic Captain Rex. The armor looks good, the paint apps look crisp. Of course, you have this weird like techno babble here on his chest, but that doesn't even really matter. On the single card release, you don't have that, and if it really bothers you, a little bit of nail polish remover or even just the blade of a knife could just scratch that off very easily. And so with that, you're left with a really nice Captain Rex Phase 1 style. And of course, I think this is probably an Ahsoka rendition. The pauldron here definitely feels very Ahsoka style, and then also the straight lines here on the abdomen, that's the same way that it is on the live-action Captain Rex in armor, the actual actor in armor for Ahsoka. If you want to see more details about that, you can also look at my Hot Toys review I just posted. The live-action armor is good, it's just different than what it should look like, and so, yeah, I think they definitely are going off of Ahsoka's armor here. But genuinely, there are no complaints from me about that. This figure is incredible for what it is. Again, at the $8 price point, this is a very nicely articulated figure. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles you'd get with a vintage collection figure, and that's okay. This is what I want this figure to be. At that price point, I don't need all of that craziness. I just want a cool Captain Rex figure to fill in the collection and have decent enough articulation to get some good poses out of. Not everybody wants or needs a $16 or $17 vintage collection figure for their collection, especially the younger generation, and so this figure fills that void very nicely. If I can find an $8 popular Star Wars character on the shelf with decent articulation, good accessories, and good paint apps, that is everything I want from a Star Wars action figure. I can especially see parents really loving this line around Christmas time. You don't want to go out and spend 20 bucks on one figure, so for about 20 bucks, let's say you buy 2 single card figures for 20 bucks at Christmas, you could get Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, you could get Captain Rex and a battle droid, or whatever the other characters they release are going to be. That's a really good deal for the price point. Again, especially in today's day and age with inflation and all of that garbage. So then that raises the question about scale. Originally, I thought these were going to be 4-inch figures and not 3 3/4 inch scale, but good news all around. These figures scale very nicely with existing vintage collection. And in fact, in many ways, I prefer this Captain Rex to the vintage collection Captain Rex that we got. This, of course, is not the best example of a vintage collection clone trooper, but still, this is not that great when you look at what is essentially an $8 figure. This is like $17, this is $8. That was unplanned, but I actually prefer this one to this one that was more money. I do hope that we get a Phase 2 iteration sometime soon because it will go really nicely with the Phase 2 501st that we already have. But even if you have some of the older 3 3/4 inch super articulated Phase 1s, these look pretty nice together. And sadly, I don't have the 501st Phase 1 that came out in Vintage Collection this year. But if I had those, I think it would go really well with this figure. So honestly, you don't even need this, but this is just more so if you have older figures in your collection. They do scale well, but this same body with a Phase 1 helmet has been released this year, and so you could just pair those together. And again, it works really well. They scale pretty well together. I would say this figure is a little bit more bulky. It's broader in the shoulders, the helmet's a little bit larger, but if you have them mixed together on a shelf, I don't think you'll notice that much. So all that to say, I am extremely pleased with this. This is such a joy to have new Star Wars figures, especially Clone Trooper figures, that get me this excited in 2025, and also don't break the bank. That's probably one of the most excellent things to hear in this year, and so I would highly recommend picking up this figure or the single card release, whichever one is more accessible. I'll link it down in the description below through Amazon if it's still in stock. I have nothing but praise for this line. It's simple, but it gets the job done in such an excellent way that I really can't fault it. There's some nitpicks. I wish the knees were a little bit less ratchety and the wrists were actually swivel joints, but apart from that, I have nothing bad to say about this. I'm so excited for the future of this line, and I hope that sales are such that it doesn't go the way of a lot of the previous toy lines that Hasbro has tried to do, like Galaxies of Adventures and stuff like that, where they do sort of an off-scale, weird and wacky line, trying to be a little bit more budget-friendly, and then it just disappears after like one wave. I really hope that that's not the case with this line, because these figures really fill that void of a budget Star Wars figure with good enough quality and a good price point. Anyways, that's my review of this figure and its giant mech companion. Leave a comment down below what you think of this toy line. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful evening, noon, or night, depending on when you watch this video. And as always, I'll be sure to catch you all in the next one.